Hello, everyone. It's great to have you here with us today. My name is Brian Bennett. I'm part of the Alumni Relations team here at Trinity Development and Alumni, and I'm delighted you're joining us for this episode of our Inspiring Ideas at Trinity series. Today, we'll be discussing the Sideline CEO, Lessons in Believing and Achieving in Life, Sport and Business with Pat Gilroy, who will be interviewed by Neil O'Driscoll from Trinity Sport. Before introducing our speaker, a few things to note. This webinar will last just under an hour. There will be a discussion after which we'll open the floor to audience questions. To submit your question, simply use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We encourage as much audience interaction as possible. You're welcome to pop questions in throughout the webinar as you think of them. I'd also like to note that we are using Zoom-generated automatic subtitles for this webinar. If you'd like to turn these subtitles on or off, click the CC Closed Captions button at the bottom of your screen, then click Show or Hide Subtitles. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on our Trinity Alumni YouTube channel. I'd like to introduce you now to our speakers. Neil O'Driscoll is the Club Development Officer for GAA and Field Sports for Trinity College Dublin. A member of the first graduating class in sports management in UCD, he worked successfully with Dublin GAA in different guises for 17 years. He was fortunate enough to represent Dublin in both hurling and Gaelic football, and is currently in the winding down phase of his playing career with the odd junior appearance with his local GAA club, Nave Marnock GAA in Portmarnock, County Dublin. And last but not least, Pat Gilroy. Pat Gilroy is the Managing Director of Breedon Ireland, a leading construction materials group in Great Britain and Ireland. He has worked in the energy, waste, water, and construction sectors for the last 17 years at the CEO or COO level at companies including PRG Power, Designer Group, Viola, ESB, and Dalkia. He holds a BA Honours degree from Trinity College Dublin, and Pat successfully managed the Dublin senior Gaelic football team to All-Ireland victory in 2011, as well as winning All-Ireland medals as a player with St Vincent's and Dublin. Pat was awarded the Chevalier d'Ordre de Mérite in November 2015 in recognition of his work in developing a French business in Ireland and also his contribution to Gaelic games. I'll hand you over to Neil now, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Neil. How's it going?
Yeah, your bio is certainly a bit bigger than my bio.
I don't know about that now. I don't know about that.
Thanks a million for agreeing to do this. Looking forward to having a bit of a chat with you today. As Brian kind of alluded to, like I suppose the theme of the chat, it's on how to build successful, strong cultures and communities within multi-different environments. And when we look at you, it's been an ongoing theme with you in terms of your sporting career, your personal life, and your business career. So really looking forward to getting some nuggets from you. I suppose if we think about that and those influences and environments that you've been lucky to be a part of or create or establish, it starts with I assume your love for your local club in Marino, Nave Vincent, St Vincent's GAA club. And how did it's obviously very storied and very successful and has lots of traditional values, but how did they shape your early childhood and set the foundation for how important maybe community is to you?
I suppose Vincent's was an integral part of my youth. From a very young age, my father was involved and brought us all down to the club, and it was a critical aspect of our life. And it was I suppose Dublin is an unusual place in that, you know, it's not you're not necessarily all playing in your parish, but St Vincent's was our parish. To us, that was our home. And we were very lucky in St Vincent's to be surrounded by a sort of an ethos and a culture which was all about giving service back to the organisation that you were in. And, you know, you great men there, likes of Mickey Wheeler and Kevin Heffernan, that I was lucky to have come across them, you know, at various different ages in my time involved in St Vincent's. And they really bred a culture that there was no one bigger or more important than the club. And that, you know, whatever you achieved, you had a lot to thank the club for. And so there was a great humility about St Vincent's in the way all of its business was conducted. and that just rubbed off on you. You know, you had you couldn't help but sort of fall into that culture and be attracted to it, because you'd had good times and you had bad times. But at the end of the day, the most important thing, I remember one of the guys down there saying to us one day, you know, the most important thing is to have young kids out training on a Saturday morning and being part of a community and be part of a place that cares about them. So it really was, it was such a big part of my young life, and so crucial in sort of developing a certain ethos and way to see how groups and how a culture can be.
And I suppose, like because I'm very familiar with the Dublin GAA scene, having worked in it for so long and being from Dublin, Vincent's have traditionally been a superpower, but unlike some of the new modern super clubs in terms of membership size, it's still, as you said, it's kind of community based and wouldn't have the same numbers of children coming through their nursery, but yet still manage to compete and win county championships across all their codes. So is there a secret sauce to their success? Is it the intellectual property in the culture, or is there something more special that you can divulge to the rest of us interested parties?
Oh, look, I think the sort of success and the foundation of success of St Vincent's is to always remain very grounded and very humble about where we came from and what we're about. And you know, yeah, look, you'll have different people who have different views, but our juvenile sort of policy hasn't been driven by really all about winning championships at young age. It's been about developing players as much as possible. And I think, you know, we were never ones either to sort of rest on our laurels in terms of when you were winning championships. There was always trying to further the you know, the facilities we had, the coaching we had. So there's been a sort of a continual drive within the club to try and build on the strengths that we had. And then I think we have a very unique situation in Dublin that there's a huge number of our members who have kids, don't live in the parish, but they bring their kids back to the club to play. So even though we have a very small pool, and largely St Vincent's is pulling largely out of from a boys and girls side, who just the two schools in Marino, primary schools largely. But there's that closeness brings benefits, and I suppose you have a whole DNA thing that's going on where people who have played are bringing their kids back. And you know, we've been very lucky to seem to always be producing, you know, multi-generations of very athletic players and people who had great skills. And look, you also get these special people that seem to crop up in Vincent's, the likes of Dermot Connolly, the likes of Jimmy Keaveney, Brian Mullins. You know, we've been lucky over time to produce guys like that who give unbelievable service then to the club, you know, because even though they're in everyone's eyes, they're superstars, but they give back as much as not just on the field, but off the field. So that continuous kind of culture of players going back and coaching. Look, I'm sure it happens in a lot of clubs, but it's something that is very dear to the basis of St Vincent's.
So I'm hearing a call to introduce a parish rule then within Dublin GAA. Is that it? if the rest of us are to try and stop you from winning?
Well, look, like Vincent's are certainly not dominant now, and I suppose one of the successes, if you go back to the 50s when Vincent's were really dominant, and you know, they did certain things like playing Dublin only players when GAA wasn't popular in Dublin at the time. I think the real success, if you like, which you know is a bizarre thing to say, but the real success is all the clubs that have grown up around St Vincent's, as a result of the success of St Vincent's and people being interested. And one club just couldn't cater for all of the demand that grew. And I'm not saying they were the sole reason for it, but they were a big reason why people were attracted to Gaelic football and hurling in Dublin. And you know, the amount of clubs that have grown up on the northeast in the last 50 years is great, and it has brought great competition. And I think it's a really healthy thing, and something that, you know, I don't think Vincent's ever stood in the way of clubs forming when they were probably too big of an area to cater for a long time.
Brilliant, brilliant. I suppose the natural transition from your time in Vincent's is to your time as an intercounty footballer, and you obviously won an All Ireland medal in 1995. And similarly to the gap between 1995 and 2011, there had been a big gap between Dublin winning their previous All Ireland in 1983 to 1995. As a player, was there anything that you noticed? Like, what was the difference maker between you finally getting over the line in 1995?
Um, I'd say the best thing to characterize that team by was ultimately to have resilience, to keep trying and keep getting there. You know, in other years, probably in '94 in particular, we had played quite well and hadn't won. And I think the resilience to keep getting back up, to go at it, was a crucial feature of that team. That team, would we look back, I think as a group, we look back and say we should have won more in terms of at All Ireland level. But we did eventually get there. And I think it's like any of these teams, these are fine margins. We won that game by a point. And I think some of the things was we were collectively probably tighter, we were probably better structured, and we were probably more disciplined. And they were all fine percentages and fine margins, and it was those things that got us over the line. Because, you know, it's always great to look back and say, well, you know, that was a win, but you know, we'd lost by similar margins in previous years, and it is fine things that get you over the line. And I think that probably the discipline in our play and how we structured ourselves probably got us over the line.
And the way, I suppose, the way you carry yourself, even as a player, then were you cognizant and kind of looking at, you know, what the difference makers were within that group, and did it have any factor, or did you take any learnings from that when you eventually stepped into management with the Dublin GAA?
Yeah, so I was always interested and fascinated by, you know, the sort of the behind the scenes stuff involved in Gaelic football and hurling, so for me, I mean, we were doing video analysis at the time, which was probably not that common. You know, strength and conditioning was only really getting established. So there was a lot of these things that I found very interesting in terms of how they can make a difference. And as we went through those years, you know, even like things like nutrition and sports psychology, they were all starting to emerge. And Dublin, again, were probably, even with that 95 team, we're starting to do stuff that, you know, maybe some other counties were doing, but we were probably taking it to another level. So all of these things, there's no doubt, all of these things shape you in terms of when you do cross the line and get involved in management. It's all those learnings. There's so many little things. Like, as I say, I was lucky to work under, you know, obviously very successful coaches like Pat O'Neill, and then, you know, Mickey Whelan and Kevin Heffernan, and you're picking lots of bits from them, but eventually, you know, it ends up being your own shape on it, you know.
Yeah, okay. And so then, when you look at the All Ireland win in 2011, but the preceding, you know, season and time in terms of getting involved with that group, was there any, like, when you reflect on it, you know, was there, like, how did you turn that particular group around? Because, you know, Dublin football were obviously on the crest of a wave in terms of the support. They were seriously popular. We would have been selling out Croke Park in Leinster campaigns, but winning Leinster titles was a big deal back then. We hadn't won an All Ireland final since 1995. What were your did you have an initial kind of assessment of the group and what needed to happen to turn it around, or was it something that evolved?
Well, I think if you go back to the foundation of the success of Dublin, a lot of things were being done very well in Dublin. Like from okay, there was a you know, a good few difficult years between 95 and 2002, but from that time on, there was a lot of clubs getting their act together. You know, Vincent's and Kilmacud won under 14 Féile footballs in the early 2000s. Then went on to win All Ireland clubs pre the All Ireland victories. So there was the other piece about, you know, DCU had started winning Sigersons with a lot of Dublin players involved, which was unusual that Dublin players weren't involved in a lot of Sigerson sort of activity pre that time. So in looking at that period, there was so much good work being done behind the scenes. The senior team had been doing really well as well. You know, it had progressed from 2002 right the way up to 2009. So there was a huge foundation to build up on here, right? And so you were talking about the last jump was what was required. So we didn't have to change a million things when we went in to the group. But you basically were looking to build on all the little, all the really solid foundations that had been put in over the previous 7 or 8 years, because there was so much professionalism in the Dublin setup. It was about trying to unearth and go after some of the things. And the biggest thing I suppose we really got the group to buy in to was looking at, every sort of setback that you got. We started to treat them as an opportunity to learn and really learn from them. And we became proper students as a group of all the setbacks on our way. And I think that was a maturity that came, and, we started to really, and we did a lot of work on mindset, as well as the mindset work was happening on the pitch as well. The way we went about training, we probably tried to create an environment where some of our training sessions were going to be more difficult than the actual, big games we ended up playing. So there was a really joined up approach between the mental side and the on the pitch stuff. And again, it is really the smallest things that can make the difference. And I think one of the biggest differences is that group bought into that whole learning culture and striving to improve and almost making themselves the competition. So that they were competing against trying to play better themselves, and to take that to a level where eventually it got them over the line.
Yeah, impressive stuff. And I suppose, like, getting over I suppose improving some of the players, some of maybe the mental barriers and hurdles that they would have had, in putting in place that culture and backroom team for success was pivotal in getting them over the hurdle. And I just wonder, are they some of those delegation skills and unearthing background team talent? Is that something that you would have mirrored in your professional career, in your business life, and in your corporate career?
Yeah, look, when you're leading anything, there's so much you could do, but you are completely dependent on the people that are working with you. And I always use that expression as working with you as opposed to for you, because working with you is what it really is about. And that backroom team we had with Dublin, were all real experts in their field. And the biggest thing that you could do there was to give them enough scope to excel at what they did and make sure it was joined up to what we were trying to achieve as a team. So setting out the correct vision for the way we wanted to play, and then for everybody to know what was their part. So, there was no point in, if you wanted to be a high intensity team, not having a very strong team who had specific skills to do what you were trying to do. And everything was joined up, but having experts in your field. Like, I wasn't an expert in strength and condition. I wasn't an expert, in any of the areas, but we had people, and the vast majority of them were volunteers who really were at the top of their game. Mickey Whelan was an exceptional, so he still is an exceptional coach, but as an inter-county guy, he could straddle a lot of things between the mental, the physical, the strength and conditioning, plus the whole area of football coaching, and he had a unique style and a unique way about him. So whether you certainly, yes, you're driving the bus, but you really are so dependent on the people around you, and it's the exact same in business. If you're going to be successful in any team, you've got to have the right people who know what it is needs to be done in their areas, and then you need to also, try and extend them a little bit as well to keep them motivated to push things on. But with that Dublin group, all of the people who were involved in that backroom team, the feedback they were getting from the progression from the team was a massive motivation. You know, they could. It's the one difference between, I suppose, sport and business, is that you really can see the live performance of people as you've trained them. Like in the work world, you don't often get to see people doing their work, but you get to see the results. Whereas in sport, you get to see it, and getting that feedback and seeing the progression where you're working on is a huge motivation for people who are working with teams.
And, you know, it's obviously, Brian mentioned in your bio that you won the Chevalier d'Ordre de Mérite, you know.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit on that?
Look, I worked with Veolia for 14 years, and I was heavily involved in the France-Ireland Chamber of Commerce. I suppose it was around a period when things got quite difficult in the Irish economy, and I helped out with trying to keep the France-Ireland Chamber of Commerce alive, and I stepped in and acted as president for a couple of years. The Veolia business was and is still very successful in Ireland, and thoroughly enjoyed my time there. So, you know, this was a very special award, and it was one of those things where it was in recognition, I suppose, of some of the sporting things that I had been involved in, but also the contribution to French business in Ireland.
Impressive. And I suppose that old saying about, if you want to get a job done, you know, you go to your busiest man. How did you manage your time between, you know, your life as a parent and family, as a player, as a manager, as a coach, and then a hugely successful business career as well?
Look, again, you don't achieve or get to achieve any of this without having an exceptional home life, and I had the benefits of an incredibly supportive wife, Yvonne, who was just unbelievable in terms of creating an environment at home that meant you had capacity to do other things. And the same with the kids. You know, the kids were incredibly supportive, because like it wasn't always a plain sailing road in terms of say, for instance, the Dublin situation where we had a really bad defeat along the way, but having that support at home is absolutely crucial if you're going to be able to achieve things. And I wouldn't underestimate that for anyone. You know, like you're rock when you close the door and you've been out in the battlefield all day, and you come in home, that sense of security and environment is so crucial. So I would say that is the bedrock of being able to do wonderful things, and to have that kind of family life is fantastic. I'd say the second thing then is to be working with the right people. You know, if you know, it's like, if someone said, if you want to be successful, well, just pick the right team. And there's a little bit to that, where if you really get the best in class at something, then as the leader of it, it makes the job a hell of a lot easier. And so being under how to delegate, because when you've really good quality people, you really also have to give them the space to be able to perform. So to be able to do that is I think it's a very important thing when you're involved in sport and in business. And the last thing then is just about organization and choices. You know, you've got to make choices when you decide to do some of those things. And so things like golf trips away, or stag parties, or, you know, just lads trips away, they go out the window. But you're glad to do those, you know, because you've got to be precious with the spare time that you do have. So I think that's a really important part. I would also be an early riser, so being organized for the day and having my plans set out. You know, it's a funny thing with the sport, people don't realize it as much, but generally speaking, the guys are obviously working all day, so you don't really get much availability with them. So it's the evening time and the weekends is when the most activity happens with them. But it's about managing that time, and as I say, also having an incredibly strong family backing you.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so I think for our people listening online and watching, this is going to be the interesting part. We're gonna delve into your time here in Trinity as a student and as a player within the GAA club. Can you, I suppose, back, because it was in the 80s when you first came here, so without stereotyping, and things have changed. Somebody from the north side of Dublin wouldn't have been the atypical Trinity student. What was your experience like?
Well, look, the first thing when you go into Trinity, it's an exceptional place, and it's a very special place. So you feel very privileged when you arrive there. And I suppose, having spent so much time in Marino and in St Vincent's and the GAA, this was a big leap into a whole new world, where you had people from all over the country and all over the world in your class. You had, obviously, a vast campus, and it really was like, it was another one of those fantastic experiences to live through, was Trinity. And I suppose the Gaelic Football Club was sort of a unique thing at the time, in that it was starting to break ground that hadn't been broken for a long time in Trinity. And you had just a collection of people involved, all players, and a great coach in Brian Ladden, who just were striving to achieve something that, was probably, if you looked at it, it wasn't realistic to expect a Trinity team to come out and sort of win a Sigerson. But that belief was there. I know we didn't get there in the end, but they were incredibly good times and an incredibly close-knit group. And so that was a whole community for me in Trinity, which was such a wonderful experience, and we're all still in touch to this day. So I think what that taught me as well was about the power of the group, and how a team could actually get on with, making something quite special from within. So, any of these teams you can have, and again, myself included, if the manager can be the greatest thing in the world, if the players are not willing and the players don't want to do it, then it's not going to happen. And that Trinity team had an incredible will to improve and to be the best they could be.
I think, for context, because I think you're making that sound an awful lot easier than what it was. So you were a part of the team that won the Ryan Cup in 1990 and 1991. So that's the Division 1 league title in college Gaelic football. I mean, that's a serious achievement. And as you said, maybe atypical for Trinity competing against other universities that would have a far more traditional background within GAA. What was the actual the environment like for the GAA team when you first came into college in 88?
Well, so I came in. It did that whole, let's say, movement of that team had started before I come into the college, and you could see there was progress coming all the time, and there was a culture of really getting to a fitness level that was going to allow you to compete. Like, the amount of training sessions we did, and double sessions and weekends away, which again was not the norm at the time, was just a great thing to be part of it. It was tough. It was very tough. Making our way out to David's or out to Santry, 4 or 5 times a week. But when everybody was doing it, this wasn't a case of cajoling people to do it. When everyone was doing it, everyone bought into it, and we did try to play a style of football that was, very attractive and attacking, and it really was a wonderful experience. But it was tough. Like, we trained awfully hard.
And that was in Santry, or was it on campus, or?
So we had a mix. We had some training in Santry, we had some training in St David's, and we had some training on College Park, which was great at the time. Some of the early part of the week stuff was done in College Park, which was a real benefit to the team. Cutting down on that travel, it was a great facility to have.
And so was there a turning point, that you can pinpoint, or was there, like you said, training camps? Like, are you serious? Back in
Yeah,
1990, 1991,
yeah.
yeah, going off to La Manga, or where were
No,
you?
no, no, no. Well, the one I was on was up in Kings Court, and our accommodation was adequate. Let's just put it that way. So
Are
we
we
made.
talking tents? Are we talking tents
No,
in
no, no, no,
view?
no, 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 no. There was a small hotel up there that we managed to stay in. But like we trained for 4 days, and it played a friendly game in the middle of it, and it was, you know, it was unique. Like, I was involved in the Dublin County panel at the time, and we weren't even doing that. So it was, I suppose, the turning point. I think it happened pre my time, in the college. This group of players, the likes of, Keane Morta and guys like Cyril Duggan, all those type of lads, had started to beat the top teams like Queens and UUJ, UCD. So that had started to happen pre my time, and so there was a sort of a momentum when I joined the team. There was a momentum in it that, um, you know, we actually genuinely believed and we were considered to be real Sigerson contenders.
And I mean, the intellectual property coming from within the playing group, because all university clubs are essentially student led and run, and that's still the case to this day. So, like, I'm interested from that side of things to think, how did you finance a 4 day training trip? Was that a budget allocation from Ducac? How did these things come about?
Yeah, I think like some of that was funded by ourselves, and some of it was we did knock on doors and called into local businesses around the college and looked for sponsorship, and we were lucky enough to get sponsors at the time. That and literally it was knocking on the door, and I remember one of them was Dunn Stores, and we called up to Dunn Stores in Stevens Green, got to meet the manager, presented our case, and luckily they presented us with a decent amount of money that funded one of those trips. So, there was a real get up and go. There was a can do attitude amongst that group, that was nothing was going to get in our way, and that this is what it needed to be done. And then we found a way to do it. And that was from the collective. Like, it was a group that just, there wasn't any excuses. It was finding an excuse to do it rather than an excuse not to do it. And it was a brilliant culture. The other thing that I would say, and I suppose it's part of, if you really do want to be successful with sports teams, especially coming from the place Trinity was, you have to be a little bit obsessive with it, and a little bit crazy in terms of the dedication that you're going to do, the dedication that group put in. It was certainly something that etched on my brain forever, to say, well, look, that is what it takes. This had to be outside of your family life and your college life. This had to be the number one thing for that period that we had, and everyone did that. And we weren't successful with Sigerson, but we had two great Ryan Cup wins, and like, it does take that to be successful in sport.
So the fact that your team was winning on the pitch and that you were training a little bit on campus, was it isolated to yourselves, or did you create a greater sense of kind of GAA community around the university? Was there buy-in from other students, other departments? Did you create a splash on campus?
I think certainly there was notice taken, yeah, and sort of, certainly there was some of the college staff started to come out to the games and support us, and you would see people watching training at College Park, and it piqued interest, definitely from the time I started in college to sort of the peak of the second Ryan Cup win. There was definitely an interest in GAA that wasn't there, say, the first day I walked through the door. So there was a curiosity, I would say, that wasn't there before.
And some of the characters on that team, speak to them. What did they bring to the party?
I mean, you just had immense personalities. Like, you had from the likes of, obviously, Joe Brolly to the Barry Harts, the Eddie O'Connors, like there was guys from all over the country who all brought something different to that, but all had massive big personalities and also had a massive will to win and a massive belief in what the collective could do. And it was such an entertaining environment. Like, so aside from the fact that we did well on the pitch, the fun we had as a group, with nights out, with as I say, the trips away, there was just it was just a wonderful experience, and just a great bunch of lads, in terms of creating that. So, because like we worked hard and we were serious, but the amount of crack and levity we had also was wonderful, and certainly helped keep the thing going.
Anything that you're able to repeat on camera?
Most of it now. Most of it now. Most of it, but as they say, what goes on tour stays on tour.
Yeah, luckily there was no social media back in those days.
Absolutely. Listen, it was all harmless fun.
Super. So when we look, I suppose when we look back at what Trinity gave to you, in terms of like building blocks for success, like we have obviously 5 GAA clubs on campus here, but there's 49 sports clubs, there's hundreds of societies. What advice would you give those clubs? Doesn't have to be sports specific. If they were going to try and recreate the experience and culture for success that you guys were able to achieve.
Well, I think the biggest thing I would say to you about college clubs is, and this is the big difference from going from your own club environment as a juvenile player, and you're coming up through the ranks, and then all of a sudden you land into college. A lot of things are done for you and handed to you when you're playing with your club, or you might have been involved in county teams. And the big thing about college teams is that's not going to happen. It has to come from you, and but it's also a great opportunity for people to actually make something happen from the ground up. So it really is, the college sports experience is really, I believe, heavily driven from a group of people, group of students who decide they want to make something happen and to drive it that way. Now, obviously, you need to get people in to support teams and run the teams, but it's really, I would say, looking back at my time, this wasn't guys who were happy to sit on their hands and just go through the motions of playing like the sport. They wanted to be the best, and so they drove it from within. And I think that's the great opportunity of college sport is to get involved, because you do get involved a little bit in administration, you get a little bit involved in sponsorship, you get a little bit involved in the management teams, and that doesn't happen when you're in your club. So it's your first exposure potentially to trying to create something special. And certainly the group that was immediately before me had done a phenomenal job at doing that in Trinity.
Super. So to try and it's going to be hard to pinpoint one, and it certainly doesn't have to be sporting. But so what's your favorite memory in Trinity? And you can't say graduating.
Look, the Ryan Cup that I played in 91 was definitely the peak for me. It was beat UCC in the final. It was one of those days where even from a personal basis the game went well, but it really was, it was recognition of all the hard work getting silverware. It was a massive thing for me, and probably at that point in my career, I hadn't really won a lot for a number of years, so it really stuck out as a sort of a turning point for me in terms of getting a bit of success at sport. So yeah, that would definitely be the highlight for me.
And they say, I suppose, sport brings around friendship for life, but that can be kind of glib, But in this case, it seems to be true. You mentioned earlier on that you guys still get together 30 plus years later.
Yeah, and there's a WhatsApp group there now that is lively at the best of times, and it's kept going. But yeah, annually the group still would get together, and certainly we'd all encounter each other, in different facets of our life, and there's a closeness there that's as good as any team that I was involved in.
Here's a key question though. Have you the WhatsApp group muted or not?
It's muted. Absolutely, it's muted. For the purpose of this webinar, it's definitely muted.
And then, so have you got so thinking about Trinity, have you got a favorite spot on campus?
I suppose the pub would probably be in a very would have very happy memories of the pub, as that's generally where we went. So I really enjoyed there. I suppose that part of the college was more where I spent my time. I used to really enjoy, I have to be honest, the coming into exam time, the whole atmosphere and vibe around the cricket pitch and that whole area there, and maybe spending an hour or so, between studying, spending some time out there, even watching the cricket or whatever was going on it. And I always thought that was a really, really nice environment to just get your head reset and go back at the hard work.
You would have had a frame for a fast bowler. Were you ever tempted?
No, I was never tempted. I don't think cricket was for me. I enjoyed watching it. Now I enjoy watching all sports, but I really enjoyed watching that on the college campus.
Super. Okay, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to some of the questions here from the audience, and we'll have a little look and figure out if there's anything interesting here that we'll hit you with. Okay.
Sure.
From Pat, from Emer Tunney Leahy. Pat, if you could play or manage any other sport, what would that be?
Probably in terms of managing another sport, I'd say wouldn't be a big ambition in terms of this, but I think the one that's probably closest related for me would be soccer. You have a lot of similarities there, and I think there's a lot of consistency there. But it wouldn't be a huge desire of me. I mean, I love the Gaelic games.
Though, but your skill set from managing businesses and teams you'd imagine would translate.
Well, look, I think there's a lot of consistencies between Gaelic football and soccer, and I enjoyed playing soccer myself. Like I enjoyed playing it. I played a little bit of it, but didn't have time to play too much of it. But it was a game that I did enjoy. Like it's one of those games where obviously you can just pick up a ball and play it anywhere. Were you? I used to play centre back.
Okay. So, threat for the corners.
Well, I wasn't brilliant at that, but I was more good at just stopping the ball and just get the ball out quick. Keep it simple.
Now, okay, we have another one here from Donica Carroll. And you mentioned the value in the sporting world for coaches to see the players' day-to-day work as well as their results. Do you think this ideology and approach affected how you shape your company's ethos that may differ from other CEOs?
Yeah, I would have a strong philosophy that when you're working with people, and you're the leader, you shouldn't be going around solving their problems for them all the time. And in doing that, I would feel that you're robbing them of development opportunities. And so I think as a leader, if you can, as much as possible, help people solve their own problems, because that's the way they're going to develop. If you keep going and solving their problems for them and fixing them, you're not allowing them to grow. So a big philosophy I would have is to encourage people to try and facilitate people coming up with solutions. And then the other side of that is, which I think is very important, it was a big lesson for me in the sporting world, was to keep catching them doing the good stuff and compliment it and give attention to all the good stuff that happens, because what you give attention to, you get more of. And so even with the coaching on the sport, when you see something good that you'd worked on and it happened, acknowledging it, giving attention to it, then there's a good chance that you're going to get more of it.
Have an interesting one here now. So from Kira Larkin, you mentioned video analysis, nutrition, S&C, etc., playing a factor in the success with Dublin. Do you think that this is necessary nowadays to succeed at club level? And with that, do you think money is also necessary to succeed?
I think the GAA is at a serious crossroads here, and I think, you know, for club players, there is some of that is going to be required, definitely, but a sort of a common sense approach to it and not spending a fortune on it is would be my strong advice to the road the GAA needs to go. And I think developing expertise within clubs, having county boards or provincial councils who can provide the right support to get the players to a certain level, I think is the way we should be going. I think spending a lot of money and, you know, when they're club players, they're not at the elite level, and the level of commitment required for it shouldn't be, in my view, shouldn't be there to the level that's required for intercounty. And I think it's something that if you can also get the balance, particularly, you know, with the club stuff of, yes, having the right knowledge and having the right information for teams and doing the right things, but also balancing it with giving the right time for them to enjoy it, you know, because I think the club thing is so important that people really enjoy it. And I think if you make it too much of a draconian situation, then guys won't stay playing the game.
Yeah, there's another question here that kind of taps into that a little bit from Niamh Digby Bratton, and Niamh says, Pat, I'd be curious to get your opinion on the sporting landscape in Ireland and the conflict of GAA still being an amateur sport. Do you think this poses a threat to its success going forward?
I think, you know, having spent time in different countries and seeing different cultures, I think we have a unique sort of situation with having an amateur association the size that the GAA is, and it brings an incredible opportunity for people to get something different out of life, and bring a sense of community and purpose that is unique. It's definitely something special that the GAA has. People roll up their sleeves, broadly speaking, and I think there's a level of professionalism in terms of the preparation that has happened that has kept the games evolving. But I think the core amateur piece is something that I think means a lot to people in the GAA. And I think if you were to go out and poll them, I think they'd say they want to see it stay that way, because it does give you something unique, and it gives you a proper break away from the hard task of work and making your way through life. It should be the ultimate escape, really, for people, and I think that's an important thing. And I think it shouldn't be. It's not something that should hinder the GAA. I think it should help the GAA in terms of its ongoing development.
Okay, a couple of soft ones coming your way. Then, have you got a sporting hero?
I suppose it's funny, like as a kid, it would have been the Dublin team of the 70s would have been my sporting heroes, and funny enough, it was the goalkeeper Paddy Cullen would have been my real icon back then, and I got to play under him then as a player, so he certainly would have been one of my sporting heroes. I think another one I would have had, again, probably showing my age here, but Liam Brady would have been another guy that I thought did things that were extraordinary for a Dublin guy.
Was he Marino based?
He was St Aidan's. He was Whitehall. Yeah. But he I think what he achieved going overseas wasn't that common for guys to be going to Italy and to make it and to be the kind of guy he was. And so I suppose those two would have been two that would have really stuck out for me.
Now, this is, I don't know if this one's lined up to get you in trouble or not. Would you like to have another go with the Dublin Hurlers? Is there unfinished business? That one's coming in from Fran Kearns. So if you know who Fran is, you can blame him, not me.
Look, again, your opportunities to participate at intercounty are always things that you're given, and you're always very grateful, and it's a wonderful thing to be involved in. But at the end of the day, your work life will always dictate whether you can do that and to what level you can do it. And unfortunately, just with the hurlers, my work life just wasn't possible. I was doing too much traveling to continue on. So I'd never say never to anything, but it's look, it's in very good hands with Mihal at the moment, and I think he's the right man to be there. So it's certainly not something that's on my agenda. I think we looked at the year we had, we certainly progressed them on, and I think it's always a good thing if you say you can move on from something and it has moved forward rather than back.
Well, without plamassing you too much, you've been an incredible, I suppose, servant of Dublin GAA, because there's a question here coming in from another Mihal Daficia, and he asked, what was it like going from a management role from the Dublin senior hurlers, or from the Dublin senior footballers to the senior hurlers, and then recently going back in as part of the backroom team with Desi.
Well, look, that this year was, you have to do that with somebody that you're close with. Like for me, Desi was a playing colleague when we started under 21 with Dublin together, and has always remained a close friend. And to be able to do that role, which he asked me to do, was you'd have to have that chemistry with a guy, and it was a pure pleasure doing it with him, because we would be so in sync with sort of our views of the way things should be done. So look, it was a completely different experience, but very enjoyable, and like a pleasure to do with somebody that's as close to that. And look, when you get success, it always is wonderful at the end of the day. But you'd have to have that special relationship.
There's a question coming in now on attributes and important attributes of a leader, and do they differ between the sporting and corporate environments?
I think some of the things I would say, I don't think they differ. I think the leader has to be, the resilience is a big part of it. It's also I think a big part of it is to be open and create an environment where people are comfortable to share mistakes, admit to failure, confront it, face it. And as the leader, you have to be able to do the same. If you have, had your part in something that didn't work, well, it's putting your hand up and saying you did it. And I think the environment that can create is powerful. But sorry, I would see very similar attributes in my experience of the business world, and that's that style of trying to get people to solve their own problems and getting the collective to work on problems, and not thinking you're the owner of all the great ideas. I think that's an important attribute.
Okay, we'll go with one last question, because it's relevant to us, really, I suppose. Coming in from David Stevenson, and he says, you mentioned before that Dublin GAA is struggling between the canals. Can you expand on that point more, and what needs to be done? I suppose that it's relevant to us because really, I suppose there's a lack of green space for all sports, and that's relevant for us on campus. It was relevant for you when you were having to go out to St David's and to Santry. I presume it's something along the lines, that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, look, it's if you look between the two canals, the amount of clubs that were there, 50 and 60 years ago to what's there now, it's a trickle of clubs, but people are starting to make an effort there, and you're starting to see some progress. I mean, you look at work Michael Dara McCauley's doing in the northeast inner city. You look at people like, Ranelagh Gale starting to sort of create some vibrancy in there, but it's a real challenge. I mean, you've got a lot of people that, there's not many traditional GAA schools that now have teams connected to them there. They've moved further away from them. So it's a real challenge for the GAA because it's a huge population centre, and it's also a population centre that has a lot of people that weren't originally born in Ireland, and I think it's a massive opportunity for the GAA, but it's not something that you're going to solve very simply. But it requires boots on the ground and I suppose rekindling some of the activity that would have been there in the past. But it's a big job, and it's something that Dublin GAA I know are conscious of it, and are all the time trying to make efforts to try and encourage it. But the ultimate issue, as you say, not having playing facilities is a big challenge. So it's not easy. It's not something that's easy solved.
Brilliant. Well, Pat, I think we're going to leave it there. Really appreciate you giving up your time and giving us some of your nuggets from your time as a player, as a coach, your time in Trinity. It's been really nice to chat. So thank you very much for coming along, and I'm going to pass it back over to Brian.
Thanks, Neil.
Neil, Pat, thank you so much for that. Fascinating discussion. It was really great, and Pat, it's great to hear your insights and your thoughts. So, thank you. And to reiterate my thanks to both of you again for very generously giving up your time. I know you're both very busy with your schedules, so we really appreciate it. So, thank you very much. I would also like to thank my colleagues in the Alumni Office for making today's webinar possible. And I would also like to thank everyone who's watching at home. Thank you so much for engaging with this webinar and for the fantastic questions. It's always great to have that such enthusiasm and engagement for these things. So thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen now. And Inspiring Ideas will be back in the new year, as you can see. So until then, if you have any questions or comments regarding this webinar series or any other questions you'd like to ask us here in the Alumni Office, please email us at alumni@tcd.ie. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again in the new year. Thank you.